So actually, it's a bit of a homecoming. So I was in the junior state of America in high school, and I grew up in a small town. I grew up in Goleta, which is just to the north of Santa Barbara, California. And it was pretty much a town full of citrus groves and the kids of UCSB faculty, which is what I was. My parents were both at UC Santa Barbara. But we had a pretty quiet life in Goleta. I think the population was about 15,000. And I joined this amazing student-run, student-led civics organization that was at that point about 40 years old, and had a really strong presence in the central coast of California at that point. And it gave me the opportunity to meet students from all kinds of places outside of my little hometown, from Los Angeles and San Francisco and Fresno and Bakersfield, and and that was a huge expanse of my world. And they were all young people who were interested in civic engagement and debate and being active in their communities and voting. And it really was a transformative experience for me. I found my political voice, and I found a real community of other young people like me who wanted to make a change in the world, wanted to be engaged in the political process. So I went off to college, and largely because of JSA, I went and got a master's degree in public policy. And the obvious place for me to work, it was sort of a fantasy place, was RAND. And I spent over 15 years there working as a political scientist, doing running large case studies, and I'm a qualitative methodologist. Try saying that 3 times fast. And I really liked my work at RAND, but what I realized was that I'm much more of a person who likes to make change rather than a person who likes to think about making change. And so I left RAND and I spent a number of years doing political advocacy work. I did work on behalf of Planned Parenthood. I was engaged. I ran the largest women's PAC, Political Action Committee, other than Emily's List, an organization in LA called the Women's Political Committee that raises money for women candidates for office. And when the opportunity came that I served on the board of JSA, by the way, for a long time, for about 10 years. I was vice president of the board and president of the board as well. And when the opportunity came to move from being a JSA volunteer to running the organization, for me, it was the perfect job because it allowed me to give back to an organization that really had given me my start. And as we'll talk more about JSA, it gave me the opportunity to run an organization that I think has a critical role to play right now in American democracy. Sure. So JSA is the largest student-run high school organization in the country. The way JSA runs is that there's a foundation. I'm CEO of the foundation. And in many ways, we're a vessel that supports the students, but they are the ones that make the decisions about what the organization is going to do in a given year. They run overnight conventions, which were in person up till COVID and are now virtual and shifting towards a hybrid model moving forward. But it's a chapter-based organization with kids in high schools around the country. In their high schools, they have debates and they have discussions. And then I'll talk about some actual projects that they've been engaged in. And they get together 3 times a year. They have a fall state model Congress and a spring state. They elect their own representatives. So they elect mayors and vice mayors. They elect governors and lieutenant governors. And it really, when adults go into one of these overnight conferences, or in this case, in the last year, virtual conferences, it's the students deciding what they're going to talk about, what projects are they going to engage in. It's entirely bottom up. It is not top down. And so I think it's one of the few places left where teenagers really are in charge. We don't let teens make a lot of decisions anymore, right? They have very structured lives and they're told to go here and then there and on play dates and things like that. And in JSA, they get to choose. They get to make decisions. For example, in our Southern California region, they decided that the fact that JSA had always had its debates in English didn't make sense anymore, and that they wanted to hold debates in Spanish, and actually in Southern California, also in Armenian. We have a large Armenian population in Southern California, and they do their debates in both of those languages. But let me give you some examples of what the kids have worked on. So in COVID, they launched their own political pen pal effort, which was to take kids from around the country and match them with another young person whose political views were as diametrically opposed as possible, and put them together to communicate about what they believe and why they believe it. And they've been writing to each other, and we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pairs. The kids make the pairings themselves. And their whole idea was, how do you encourage civil discourse? Well, you encourage it through understanding and through relationship and through the elimination of the notion of other. And so this was their idea. So they've been running this political pen pal program this year, which I just think is a riot, and they're really enjoying it. Yes. And where they're friends, right? Where they actually want to spend time with each other, which I just think is really fantastic. I mean, this happened when I was in JSA. I'll tell you that I flew to Washington, D.C. In 1980, sitting next to a young man who has come to be one of my dearest friends over all these years. We were on our way to JSA summer school in Washington, D.C. He's a libertarian. I am not. My politics are relatively left of center. And this is one of the more important friendships in my life, is the friendship I have with him. He's on the JSA board now, by the way. And we have understood all these years that we have a very similar set of values, by the way, about how important democratic institutions are, and the importance of voting, and the importance of young people understanding that their voice matters. Like, those core beliefs transcend ideology, I think, in many ways. Let me give you one more really great example of what the kids have done recently. So this was pre-COVID. We have a school that's in sort of the eastern side of downtown Los Angeles that's involved in JSA. It's called Alliance Smith Tech. And they decided that they wanted to do a project, an actual civics project, not some hypothetical something. So they did a poll in their neighborhood about what was the most important civics issue that their actual neighbors, that the homes near their school cared about. And the thing that they cared about most was that in Los Angeles at that point, it was illegal you couldn't get a permit to push a cart and sell something out of a cart. And a lot of this community earned income pushing carts, selling fruit, selling tacos, selling whatever. So these kids wrote legislation, contacted their local city council person, and helped bring a resolution to the Los Angeles City Council that would legalize push carts and let them get permits. They testified at the hearings that the city had, and it is now legal to push carts in Los Angeles, and you can get a permit for it. And those kids were JSA kids who worked really hard on that. because they had learned through our program that they had the right to express their political opinion, but they also learned how to do it. What was the way in which they could take what they wanted to have happen and actually see it implemented. Like many organizations, we've had to move to a virtual digital online model. We're hoping that by the fall, we'll go back to at least a hybrid model of our programs. So last summer, we had girls who at the Young Women's Leadership Program who were extremely interested in how we talk about sexual abuse and in empowering young women to speak up for themselves if they've been abused. And they formed their own 501c3. We helped them with that. We helped them figure out what it would take for them to form their own nonprofit. And then we, through some changes in how JSA is running now, we're taking the summer and the work students do in the summer and bringing it into our school year program so that when they start projects like this, they now have a national platform of kids from around the country who can work on these projects with them. So they're given opportunities to present the project work that they did in the summer and bring in students from our 35 states where JSA exists and actually work on these projects. I'd love to give you just one more example. So I'm also really proud of, two of our JSA alums went off to college last year, and they had done all the work that you do in JSA, and they decided that the project that they were most interested in was diversifying the kinds of books that young people read in high school. And they launched their own nonprofit in college. It's called Diversify Our Narrative. And it's entirely founded by JSA alums, and and run by college students now a year out of being in JSA. And they're already working with school districts around the country to talk to them about the book lists that their English classes have and encourage them to diversify the voices that are included there. I didn't have anything to do with that. That's what they thought they should do when they finished and went to college. They thought they should be in school and launch a nonprofit at the same time. And I think that's fantastic. I think that's exactly what JSA raises kids to do. So if a student wants to start a chapter, just go to our website. It's very easy to find the How Do I Start a Chapter page on the website, and you input your information, and we have a How to Start a Chapter kit that you'll get. And one of the great things about being student run is that if you fill out one of those forms, you will immediately be contacted by students, because our students do our outreach. So there are in every part of the country, students on their student cabinets, the way the federal government has a cabinet, who have jobs related to expansion and new chapter starting. So rather than getting contacted by a grown-up, you'll get contacted by another high school kid to help you start your chapter. If you want to give us money, you will in all likelihood get contacted by a grown-up. So there are donate buttons on our website, and our staff are listed there. The Chief Development Officer is there. We would be delighted to take support from individuals or corporations. We have some corporations who sponsor us, but most of our support comes from individual philanthropy, and we would be happy to have your support. The more philanthropic support we have, the more kids we can reach, and the more we'll make change in the country, which can I just say, for example, for a moment, we're very proud of our alums. So Mayor Eric Garcetti is a JSA alum. John Ossoff, who just got elected in Georgia, is a JSA alum. Leon Panetta and Norm Mineta, JSA alums, Ed Meese, who was Attorney General under the Reagan administration, is a JSA alum, longtime chair of our Board of Trustees. In fact, our Board of Trustees, this is the bipartisan nature of JSA, was co-chaired for a very long time by Ed Meese and Mike McCurry, who was Bill Clinton's press secretary. And they worked together very well for a long time. Our newest trustee, by the way, is Mark Takano, Congressman Mark Takano, also an alum, who is the first openly gay Asian ever elected to Congress. And we're super happy to have him as a member of our Board of Trustees. So we definitely raise folks who are going to run for office, but we also raise political leaders. Charles Schwab is a JSA alum. Lots of writers and people involved in the press. And we raise people who grow up to be CEO of JSA.